Hello, New Games here with another video in the series of remaking the core version of Getaway Shootout in Unity. In the last video, we implemented a gun into our game, and as we see in the setup right here, from the last video, we just have a static gun that can shoot players. And that currently works in the Unity scene once it loads up, but in this video today, we want to continue implementing this gun and importantly add ammo to the gun and other effects that the gun would use, such as a cooldown and anything that you would want to extend. And then the other important thing we'll be doing today is making the players hold the gun and be able to actually shoot the gun with the player input system. So those are the two things that we'll work on today. First, we'll knock off getting ammo for the gun and any other attributes that we want. So I'm going to first then just create a script, and I'll do it in that power-ups folder. And I'm going to call this gun controller. So we can control everything with ammo and cooldown time just within this gun class, but my idea is to actually create a separate script that will call the gun class, and this script will handle all the ammo and cooldown time. And this is just a design choice, but I'll show you later why I'm kind of going this route, making it a whole separate script. Because it should generalize a lot better in our system. So the first thing that I'll do for this script, we want to have int that is just the ammo, and I'll just call it max ammo for this gun. And then corresponding to that, I'll do another int that is cur ammo with the current amount of ammo in the gun. And I'll initialize on start of the game just to be the current ammo equal to the max amount of ammo that we have. So this just makes the gun start with the max ammo. And the next thing I want to do is actually to use the gun. And I'm going to do something similar to the gun class, is just have a public void and call it use. And when we call use, all we want to do is call the gun component, this gun class use. And currently we don't have a reference to that, so let me just create a reference. We go to private gun, and on start, we'll just get the component of gun, assuming it's on the same object. So when we use, we just want to use the gun. But one thing we have to keep track is the amount of ammo we have. So when we use the gun, we should decrease the amount of ammo just by 1. And also, we should be keeping track. If we don't have enough ammo, we should not be able to fire the gun. So if the current ammo is less than or equal to 0, just return and don't use the gun. Okay, so that should work to actually fire this gun with ammo. Just a quick test here. We're gonna add this to the gun object that we created. So it is called gun controller script, and we give it amount of max ammo. We'll go default that to 5. And to test this out, I'm actually going to change the input. So currently on the gun class, we have this using the space key to fire the gun. I'm going to remove this and actually just include this on this gun controller that we created. Again, this is temporary. We're going to actually implement player input in the future, or in shortly. So I'm just going to set this. I noticed it's defaulting 0. I think it'd be nicer just to have it default to some larger value. So I'm giving it a default of 5. And then now we should be able to test this out. We'll be able to get a certain amount of shots before we can't fire anymore. So let's see if we can have 5 shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then once I'm pressing, there's no more bullets to fire, so we've used all of our ammo. So it looks like it's implemented correctly so far. The other thing I want to do, as I was mentioning earlier, is just have a cooldown time. So I'm going to do a public float cooldown. And I'm going to default this just to 1/10 of a second. And again, I just want to have a private variable that stores the current cooldown. And the idea with cooldown is you can't shoot the gun. You have to wait a certain amount of time before you can shoot the gun again. And all we'll do for this is when you fire the gun, set the current cooldown to the cooldown time. And in the updates, while we're updating this class, if the current cooldown is greater or equal to 0, we just want to decrease this cooldown time just by time.delta time to get the actual time of that frame. And so this will decrease the cooldown time till it hits 0. And when it hits 0, that means we can fire the gun again. So the only other thing we have to do is to check and make sure that the cooldown time is, so we want to actually check if it's greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then we're returning and not firing the gun. Now I just want to check if this cooldown time works. So I'm going to set it to something large so we can actually see the effect. So I have a cooldown time of 1 second. So if I spam the spacebar, it only shoots every 1 second, not every keyboard press, which is what we want. And then I'll just do one final thing with this gun controller class. In the Getaway Shootout game, there's one gun that you can just hold the button to kind of have an automatic gun. So that's what I'm going to do to implement here. I'm just going to do a public bool and call it is automatic. And this will just determine if that gun is automatic. And we'll have to change it up just a little bit, this whole functionality. So we'll need, let's see. The first thing I'll do is change this use function to not just be the when is pressed this frame. I'm just going to say is pressed. So the used will be called every frame that we have the button pressed, which is what we want. But I'm going to create a variable up here and call it private bool. I'll call it maybe is using. Or maybe something like is use up. Because the idea here is to actually have another input to know when we release the spacebar key. So forget what it's called. Canceled. Something. I just want to know when it is released. Maybe it's released. Yeah, was released this frame. And we want to call another function, and I'll call it cancel use. And basically this is when we are releasing our input to fire. So we want to stop whatever firing we do. So we'll call it here. And we can set the variable right here to is use up to true. And so, okay, this is where I want to check. I'll do another check here. Well, first I'll set is use up to false because the use button is down when we use it. And now I want to make another check to first see if the gun is not if the gun is not automatic. So it's not an automatic gun, and the use up is false. We don't want to fire the gun again. So this is we fired the gun before because use up. Well, okay, wait. We want to switch this. All right, no, that's right. So if we've fired the gun before, is used up is going to be false, and that means we fired in a previous frame. We want to wait till we set it back to true with this cancel function before we actually use the gun again. Okay, so let me check if that works. Just in the Unity scene. So I'm going to go back to this gun. I'm going to first make it automatic and give it a smaller cooldown. So this should make it seem like I'm going to increase the max ammo as well. This should make it seem like an automatic SMG gun, something like that. So if I just hold spacebar, it's kind of hard to see since the lines are overlapping, but it looks like it is working. Maybe I'll just increase the cooldown for right now so that the lines don't overlap. Okay, so yeah, you can see it firing at every half second, and I'm just holding the spacebar down, which is what we want. Now I'm just going to quickly test turning this off, so making it not automatic gun. And if I hold the spacebar, you can see it. It's only one per spacebar press, but I did notice a bug there quickly. Currently, we default this use up to false. We want to just default it to true. That way we don't have to wait one keyboard press up before we actually fire the gun. This was just preventing it from firing the first time right away. Okay, so what will be next? I don't really like this name for the is use up. I'm gonna call it maybe has canceled. It's kind of just a better name for that. And just copy all that. Okay. So this looks like a good core gun controller class. Again, this could just be logic inside the gun class. We could have just done everything inside here. But now I'll show why I'm kind of thinking why this will be nice to have it separate. Actually, I'll show that in just a little bit. I think the first thing I'll do is actually to hook up player input, because right now the gun is just fired by spacebar. Obviously, we don't want that. We want it on the player. So I think the first thing then I'll do is to actually make the gun a prefab that we can attach to the player. So I'm just going to call this object sniper, just rename it. And the other thing I'll do, I'll just remove the sprite component and actually make it a child, just to make it more organized for this object. So I'm going to say sprite, and I'm going to paste that property or that component. And this is just like a organization thing, to have the sprites as a child, because that's the renderer, and have all this gun component classes on the main root of the object. So the next thing I'm going to do is to actually make this a prefab object, and I'm going to create a new prefab folder for all these weapons usable objects. So I'm going to call this just weapons. And all you have to do is just drag that object to make it a prefab into this folder. And there we go. So that is the weapons, the weapon object prefab for the sniper. And well, we can remove this from our scene now. And the next thing to do would actually be to attach it to the player. So ideally, we want to have the player like dynamically get the gun from a power-up box, but we'll do that in the next video. For right now, I'm just going to hard code and manually just attach this gun to the player right now. So I'm going to attach it to the holding spot transform object, and because that's ideally where we want to hold all of our weapons and so forth. So I'm going to reset position. And then one thing I'm just quickly noticing is that the sniper is on the wrong layer. So on this sprite layer, I'm going to change it to the player layer, and I'm going to have it order 0 on the layer. And the reason why I have it order 0, if I jump back to the player, the body sprite is on -1, and the arm sprite's on 1. So this will just situate right nicely in between the arm and the body, which is visually what we want for this. And so I'm just going to drag this sniper. Also, I'm going to rotate it to align better with the arm. So rotate it 90 degrees. And just situate it nicely kind of with his hand. Again, I'm just doing this manually because we'll be doing it in code later. But that looks good like that. Now if I jump back to the scene, we should have players holding guns, and that's exactly what we see. And we still have the spacebar to actually use these guns. So if I hit spacebar, both players fire their guns, but we don't want both players firing guns on spacebar. We want their own input. So let's actually create a class to handle this gun input. So I'm going to go to player and create a new class, and I'm going to call it, here we go, create model behavior, and I'm going to call it player. I'm going to call it player usable controller, as we'll see in a second, because I don't want this just to handle our guns and so forth. I want this to handle any sort of power up, health pack, any sort of usable object that the player can hold. So I'm already kind of making this a general class to begin with, and we'll extend from there. So what do we want to do with this class? I think we should have just 2 simple methods to actually call this gun controller class. And again, this is just going to be something like public void use. And the idea here is to use whatever gun controller that we're using. And in the future will be any sort of usable object. So first I need to get a reference to this gun controller. So gun controller, call it controller. Oops. And just on start, we just want to get the gun controller component. But importantly, this is going to be sitting again in that holding spot of our player. I guess I don't have it up, but it's going to be a children of us. So I'm going to do get component in children, and to get that component. And then when we use, whenever we press the use button, we just want to say controller.use to use the button. And again, since we set up a cancel use, I'm going to do a cancel. And we just want to call cancel use. So there's some duplicate code going on here because we just copied basically just these two methods, but this is just a starting kind of system to get us going. It'll make more sense slowly as we add more guns, add more objects that we can use, because this general system should work nice. So what we have to do now is actually call these two new classes, or two new functions, and this is going to be called from our actual player input. So I'm going to jump to the player input system that we created previously, and so what we want to do now is we already set up this power up button in our Unity input system, and the next thing to do is just actually make callbacks to know when this is pressed and when this is released. So that's what I'm going to do now. Very similar to what we've done before. So I'm just going to do that. And I'm still not certain if this is the best way. It's kind of clunky with all these callbacks, so this could change in the future. But okay, so when we have the power up just being pressed, we want to call a function, and I'm going to create a new function down here on power up callback, and it's going to be very similar just to the move callback, where we just want to know if we're just pressing the button, call one function, and then call another function if it's something else, or call a different function, if it's being released. So we're just checking for these two events. I'm just going to quickly get a reference to that new class we called player usable controller, and I'm going to just call it PU, something like that, and then again just get the component at start, and this is where now I can actually call use, and the other one is just we want to know if we're being release this power up button. So if we're canceled, that's Unity's way of saying released. We just want to say cancel the use. Okay, so that seems fine. Now this won't completely work because how we implement it, we want this use to be called actually every frame that this use button is being pressed. Right now it's only going to just call it the first frame it's pressed, which is something we don't want. So we want this actually to be called in the update, and we want to know if the button is obviously being pressed, so not call it every frame. So I'm going to have a bool, and I'm going to say is using, just to have a bool if we're using, if we're pressing the button. And I'm going to say if we're using, call this controller.use, and when we first initially press the button, we want to say is using to true, and when we cancel the button, when we release button, we want is using to false, something like that. And something, I think this would work good. One thing I'm just thinking of already is when we deactivate our game object, if we're holding this using button, we want to actually disable it. So I'm going to say void on disable. If we're disabling an object, we want to reset our component. We don't want to be still using, so I'm going to say just is using to false to avoid resetting our player to having it is using to true. And that should be good enough to actually get the player input working. I guess let's go ahead and test it out and see what this looks like in our game. So one thing to test this, let's see. We need to actually add the class that we created, which was that player, what do we call it? Player usable controller. So we add that class. We already have this input. I forget where pretty sure we have it on here already. Yeah, because the player is moving. So we have the player input already being fed to the object. So it should be all ready to test. There is a error in the console. Okay, so I forgot to actually finish this. Okay, so what do we power up started? We want to say on power up callback, and the same thing for canceled. And then when we disable, we want to just remove these. And you see, like, I have these is left down, is right down in this class, and I pretty much did that same thing in this class. So maybe in the future I'll actually move this to the player input class, or the player movement class, so that the logic isn't done here. But for right now, I think it's fine. Okay, so now let's see if the players can actually shoot with their own input buttons. So if I move the players around, if I press the R key, which is the player 1 shoot button, we will see if it shoots. Okay, so it looks like it shoots. Yeah, so that looks good. You can see the player 2 over here died because the player was shooting. Now let's test the other player. I'm pressing the P key. This is the key that we set up, and it's shooting as well. Okay, so this is all looking pretty good. Both players are able to shoot, and yeah, they're both pressing. I'm just going to double check to make sure the automatic is working with this gun. So if I change this to automatic and then just hold the power up keys, now we should be able to just use this kind of as an automatic gun. So I'm just holding the R key, and it looks like player's shooting, and the same thing with the other player. Okay. So from here, I think, let's see. Yeah, from here, I just want to do a small change. So I noticed when we're just testing that, when the player dies, it loses its gun right away, which is something that we don't want. See, right there, the player just lost its gun right when it dies. And that's because we're creating a whole new object when the player dies. That's that ragdoll object. And it obviously doesn't have that reference or that object to that sniper. So I think it'd be nice to have any guns that the player's holding just transfer to that ragdoll object. So that'll be a simple fix to just code it in our actual player class where we're handling the ragdoll. And this might get moved to a different spot in the future, but for right now, we just want to transfer basically anything in our hand we should transfer. So we have this holding spot, and I think it would just be nice, anything in this holding spot transfer to our ragdoll. So that's what I'm going to do. And first I'm going to get the transform component. So transform hold spot, and I'll have to go through this tree. We could create a reference for it, but I think this is the correct route. Let me just double check. Okay, so get child 0, get child 1, get child 1. We could be using names too instead of indices, but this is fine since it's probably going to be static, not going to change in the future. And we'll also get the new hold spot, or maybe the ragdoll hold spot, we'll call it. And this is just the hold spot on the ragdoll. And all we want to do is just transfer all the children in that hold spot. So for each transform child in this hold spot, we just want to set the parent. So child, a parent equals the ragdoll hold spot. Oops, ragdoll hold spot. So yeah, we're transferring all the children to a new parent. Awesome. So now let's see if this is working on our player. So we should see when a player dies, they keep their gun. If I can, it's kind of hard. So right now, we obviously don't have the arms locking to the player. That'll be in a future video, but for right now, I'm just gonna try to, get the player to work. Okay, so it almost worked. Definitely is weird that that gun got here before the player gets destroyed. The gun is offset weirdly, and I think this is something with a transform of resetting this parent as different local position. Let me just drag this up. So if I navigate to arm pivot, we can see, let's see. Yeah, so it definitely got a kind of like a weird scale or a weird translation of the position. I think a easy way to fix this would just be something like this: child dot local position, and we'll have to actually just keep it as a temporary variable before we set the new parent. So vector3 local position. I'm just gonna call this position is the child local position, and when we set the parent, this local position is going to be changed like we just saw. So we're going to set it back to the original. And local position just means the position relative to this parent, and we don't want that changing. And I'm going to do the same for the rotation. So I'll just do a quaternion. Rotation equals child local rotation. And quaternions are just associated with rotations in Unity. And I'll do the same thing as before and set it there. Okay, so let's see if that's working. There might be a way in Unity to like prevent that, to have it just keep the local position when setting a parent, but now I'm just going to do the same thing and try to kill one of the players. So one shot. It's kind of hard with this input system right now. Okay, come on. Actually, I think the easiest case would just be when the player... Okay. So, killed the player. It's hard to even tell, but the player's dead. And it looks like it maintained the correct orientation and position. So that looks fine there. And, okay, so I want to wrap up this video now. We basically got everything implemented in for the ammo of the gun, and also just the input to the gun. Both players can shoot. But before I end, I want to actually kind of change the classes just a little bit to make it more generalizable, because the idea is to not just have players holding weapons such as guns, but players holding other objects that are usable, such as in the original Getaway Shootout game, there's health packs which can be used and hold, and there's all other sorts of weapons that we can be using and holding. So the first thing to make this more generalizable would be to have this gun class be extended from a more abstract class. And I think a good class name for that would be something like usable. So anything that is usable by players in the game will be extending this class. And let me just create that usable class right now. So I'm going to go to the scripts and create a new class. Scripting behavior. I'm going to call it usable. And basically, so this is going to be an abstract class, as I was saying. And it's going to be a very simple class because all we want to do is to use it. So the usable will be usable. So I'm just going to have one function and call it use. And I'm going to make this abstract so classes can implement this class. You're not going to actually instantiate this class, but yeah, classes implement this. And you can check out more information about abstract classes if this isn't familiar to you. But yeah, the idea is to have this main usable class and then usable objects such as gun, extend this. And we're getting an error here because the use is currently, well, let's see, it's not overriding. So any child classes will have to override that method since it's abstract. Okay. So that's the first change I wanted to do. And that shouldn't really change anything. 1 second. So if I hit play, again, nothing should have changed. We just changed that base class. And now this is where I'd like to change some more things. So we have this gun extending from usable. And then we have this gun controller calling this gun class. But we can actually make this just general to be usable. So this is calling any usable object or any usable script. And I'll just name it usable. And everything's the same as before. We're just calling usable.use when we want to use it. Okay, so I made that change, and then now we can see that the name gun controller doesn't really fit for this class anymore, because this is more of a general kind of class that's not just for guns. So I'm going to call this actually usable controller, since it's controlling anything that is usable. And currently right now it's kind of situated to have this ammo cooldown, so it's pretty specific to guns. But in Getaway Shootout, pretty much every sort of usable power-up kind of follows this format with a cooldown. And I'm going to actually change this max ammo attribute, so I'm just going to say max uses to kind of go more with the uses kind of terminology. So I'm going to say something like that, and again get rid of this and just say current uses. And then again we'll just have to refactor that. So yeah, all I'm doing here is just kind of refactoring this to be more general, to support any sort of type of usable object. And with those changes, I think that is all good. I need to actually still rename the class. So if I go to our power-ups, this is no longer called the gun controller, it's called the usable controller. And so yeah, that seemed like it changed. And then the last thing we need to do is to actually change this in our player usable controller, because it's no longer specifically a gun controller, it's just a general usable controller. And set that like that. Okay, so now I'm just going to test if any of those changes broke anything. Let's see. Okay, so players can still fire the guns. Yeah, that all looks good. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of where I wanted for this video. Is we got our player input working for the weapons, and at the end of the video we made it a little bit more generalized because I think this will be helpful in the future because we don't want just weapon or just guns only to be usable. It's going to be nice to have any sort of usable object that implements that usable class, and right now it's just a simple use to call that class. So in the next video, we'll actually be working on getting the players to not just spawn with the guns, but to actually move around and collect a gun with a power-up box. And yeah, from there we'll move on to actually locking the player's arm to a player target and so forth. But yeah, we'll keep moving on forward. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.